Well, good morning and welcome back to Reviving an Idler. I know it's been a long time and I thank you very much for your patience. As you can see, we've got the frames that we started to install in the last video. They are in, still waiting their copper roves, but they are in the boat. And as you can see, we've got the steamer back on again. Just starting to get a bit of the heat coming through, so in a moment I'm just going to pop in the last two of the intermediate frames that are going to go into the boat before we remove some of her centre line. So in a moment we're going to fire those in and get them installed, and then we'll have a look around the rest of the boat and see what we've been up to. Well, while those are cooking, I'm going to take you down and show you around some of the work that's been happening in the last couple of weeks. So the main thing we were looking at was the frames, and we did that in the last episode where we managed to install the starboard one here. I have subsequently removed the one that we installed in that video and replaced it, as it was just not quite smooth enough, and again I explained the reasons for that in the last video. Just the inside faces were a bit rough and I wasn't too happy with them. But these are the frames that we got back from the joinery shop, and they've given us nice clean faces. If I burrow around, you'll see the next two that are going to go in, and those have been given a preliminary bend using the old frames, and they are just ready to be whacked into the steamer. It takes about 2 hours cooking, and then we can get them installed back into the boat. Carrying on our little guided tour, as you can see we've got these two locations just under the forward deck beam, and that's the last of the intermediate ribs to be installed, and that's what's in the steamer just now. Moving forward again, you can see we've been busy up in the forepeak, just getting these in. So we're still having a bit of difficulty getting time to get cracking with the roving. However, over the winter months, Mark tends to be a bit quieter with his work, so we'll be able to get on and get a good session done and hopefully get all these rows closed over and out of the way. Now, the reason I've left all these ribs off at the very peak, the forepeak there, is at the moment there's one of the old ones at the front there, and that's just doing something to hold the front of the boat together, because the stem post is going to have to come out and get replaced. So what I want to try and do is keep the rough shape of the planking as best as possible and use that with the old rib there, because that's eventually going to be coming out anyway. So there's no point in cutting a new one and refitting it only to take it off again. Once we've sprung the stem post and we've got that removed and replaced, then we'll be in a position to put back in the other ribs. Now the absence of those ribs just now is going to allow just a little bit of extra flex in the front of the boat, so that when I do come to remove it, they'll move away from the stem post, and I can lever, pull the nails, and I can lever it away from the stem post enough just to sort of slip the whole thing out. When the new one goes in as well, it's likely to have slightly different proportions and dimensions, so there's no point in cutting the feet of these new ribs to match the old stem post when the new one's quite likely to be slightly different. So that's the reason I've left that as is just now. So one of the things I'll be looking at trying to do today is to remove this large deck beam and the frame that lies just underneath it on both sides of the boat, so I can get that prepped and ready for the next steam vent installed. I'm quite keen to get these steam vents in early. As you saw in some earlier videos, with the temperature changes over the winter, it makes steaming that little bit more difficult. We have far less time to play with. And although we are much better at steaming, it's still a tentative subject that we have to be careful with. So if I can get these in whilst the weather's a little bit milder, that's going to benefit us in the long run. This deck beam, just directly behind me, and the one just behind it, is still providing a little bit of support to the shape of the hull. Okay, stopping the hull from being pressed in by the posts on the outside, but it's also holding the hull in so it can't flop too far out. I don't believe at this stage it's doing too much, but it's doing something. So what I want to try and do is brace up the sides of the hull so it can't just flop and spread out willy-nilly. And for that I'm going to use this large lump of oak behind us. This is a piece that I had kept to the side for use as deck beams in the future. But as you can see, it's quite a bit longer than the beam of the hull, and that's going to be fine. What that means I can do is I can screw a block in there, hook that around the outside of the hull, and then screw a block on the other side, and that means that once I take this beam out, there's nowhere for it to go. It can't go anywhere else. It's just going to butt up against those two blocks I put in there. A very simple, very easy solution to a problem. This bit of the hull also has these knees. And as you can see from the gap that's opened up in the back here, that there has been some movement of the hull dropping away over time. There's a nail going through there, and there's a nail going through there, and there's a smaller couple of sort of mini nails going in there. But there's nothing in the midsection here. And as you can see from the end of this beam here, it's also very, very rotten. So, in the grand scheme of things, there isn't a lot of support being provided by this beam, but it's still something. So I do want to put something in place to control that. Okay, so we've got all the rivets out of that floor there. That's good. Really good condition. A little bit of corrosion on the outside, obviously. A little bit verdigris, but outside of that, nothing wrong with them. They would have gone on for years and years and years to come. So we've cut the frames away from the floor, and the next thing we need to do is actually try and remove the frames. Just like the last pair we removed, there's going to be iron nails behind there, and some of them are going to crack, some of them are going to pull, some of them are going to be wedged in the frame, are going to end up getting pulled through the planking themselves. So there's going to be a lot of damage going on, and of course there's going to be iron sickness in there as well. So can't wait to get this open and see if it is the same as previous, because you never know. Fingers crossed. We've been quite lucky with the boat so far in terms of restoration, so everything might be better than the last frames, but then more likely it's going to be much, much worse. So going to very carefully lever away at the foot of the frame, try and lift it off the nails, and work my way up with wedges and other crowbars, etc., until eventually I get to the head, and hopefully at that point it'll be able just to lift off in one complete piece. Whether that happens or not, we'll wait and see. It'd be quite nice to get the whole thing out in a single piece, but it's probably quite likely to break round about the midpoint, just at the turn of the bilge there, so see how it goes. Nice to get it out in one piece, because it means we've got something nice we can use as a template, or draw around, or just take the lines of for any potential future builds, or anybody wants to copy the boat in the future. So it's nice having something solid to work with. Right, join me up here on the poop deck for a little coffee and a natter. Well, what is Reviving an Idler? Well, Reviving an Idler is my project, my ambition and my dream at the moment. Idler is this 23-foot gaff cutter. She is oak frames on pitch pine, and I'm restoring her and bringing her back to life. Idler is very special to me. She is part of the family, I suppose you'd say. She was my first boat ever. I bought her when I was naive and young and didn't really have a clue what I was doing, and didn't really understand much about boats in general, never mind wooden boats, despite having a long passion for them. I loved everything about them, and I kind of bought her with the intention of learning as I went along. And little did I know that that was very much going to be the case. A huge amount of boat building has been learned through playing and messing about on this little boat. So if that's something that interests you, I highly recommend you go out and buy yourself a boat, or pick up a boat. There are millions just sitting in yards just now, just waiting for somebody to give them a home. And most of these boats require extensive repair work along similar lines to what we're doing here with Idler. And I highly recommend that if you are interested in boat building, give it a punt. These boats are just going to go on to rot or sit in the yards and eventually be chopped up and put into firewood. So if you pick her up, stick her in your back garden, and you spend a year fiddling around and you repair a couple of ribs, or you take a planking, or you simply take her apart, you'll have learned so much about old wooden boats and stoked a fire in you that I think is irreplaceable in today's world. We're all caught up in technology, and having a little place that you can go to be, connected with craftsmanship, to be connected with your hands again, is a very good and worthwhile activity in today's world. And after all that time, you decide that you haven't got the time, the money, the energy, the inclination, whatever. She was going to be burnt anyway. So you've done the right thing by picking her up, learning her, and giving her a new lease of life, even if it was just for a short one. You've done a good thing. So if that's something that interests you, I say do it. Pick up the boat, go for it, make it happen. You'll never lose. At worst, you'll end up with a wealth of experience and a few coins later. But outside of that, you'll never lose. So with Idler, I made the naive decision of taking her out of the water and kind of panicking when she broke some ribs in a storm on her mooring, and I kind of just let life slip by during all that time. So she was left to degrade, left to rot. Did my best, dropped in every now and then, but my interests lay more or less elsewhere throughout the majority of that time. However, I did make a promise, and that promise was that I would put her back on the water and that she would float again, and I am going to keep that promise. I've never broken my word to date, and I don't intend to start now. So Idler will float again, and even if it takes me many years from now, it will happen. So I'm very excited to be sitting on the poop here. There'll be a boom riding above me, much probably in the same position as this beam, in no time at all, hopefully. And so I'm glad that we are all putting our little bit of life and our own little bit of story back into this old boat. She is old, she's had a long life, and she's got the scars to show it. But you are a part of this mission, I'm a part of this mission, and she's ultimately the star, and seeing her afloat one day is going to be a really good thing. So thank you so much once again for stopping in and checking out what we've been up to during the Reviving an Idler project. Just a wee final word from me to say thank you so much once again for your patience. I would like to produce more videos. The subject matter has been fairly repetitive of late, so that's the reason I've not posted more regular videos. As things start to get a bit more interesting, I'll start putting out a few more videos as well. So going forward from here, we've got a couple of frames into the boat. These are new frames. They've got the floor to go in beneath me. Get them all bolted up, and then we'll put some sort of temporary structure across between the beams, and that'll add strength to the top sides. Essentially, these frames will become almost a box section girder-like strength throughout the middle of the boat. And from that we can work aft and we can work forward, keeping strength and stability in the hull. The next stages for that then moving forward is we do have more frames to replace, and we have these ones amidships already sawn out, so we can start looking at those, and we have a frame just behind that we can also start looking at. And then moving on from there again into the future, we'll be looking at pulling out the stem post and having a much closer look at the centre line, in particular the damage in the after end of the keel. So we've got a lot of exciting things coming up and a lot of things to look at, but we also still have a lot of work before we get there. A lot of roving, a lot of peening needing done, all these new frames need their new nails put in, etc. So there's still a lot of fairly monotonous, fairly uninteresting work still to be done, but we are still ticking forward, and we are getting where we need to be slowly but surely. So biggest thank you from me. Thank you so much for watching, sharing, subscribing, being part of these videos. I really genuinely appreciate it. In particular, a huge high five to you Patreons out there. I appreciate that there's been a delay in the videos, and I can't thank you enough for continuing your sponsorship and your support of the project. So thank you so much for all your kindness. I greatly appreciate it. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the next video. Can't wait to get some more material out there and get you some nice cinematic images of the boat as we start to move forward in the darker winter months of Scotland. So it's a cheery bye from me just now, and I'll see you in the next video.